this is Kelly from Cozy Reader Kelly, and today I'm doing the Unfortunate Book Tag. And this tag is based off of the series of Unfortunate Events. And the original tag was from What Page Are You On? And I was tagged by Emma Rosen Books. And before I was tagged for this, I had never read any of the books in the series. So I went out and got the first book, The Bad Beginning, from the library and read it. It's very short, so it goes by real quick. I think I read it in one day. And to say, I didn't really love it. I think the problem is that I didn't read it back when they were first out. I think when they first started, I was probably about the time I was graduating from high school, and so I just missed the boat on like being the right age to begin this story. And so there's nothing technically wrong with it. I'm not going to keep reading them. It was fine. So unfortunately, I'm not like huge fan of the books, but I'm still going to do the tag based on them. And so all of these are, I guess he did one for each of the books that's in the series. So there's 13 prompts for the tag. And the first one is a book you would consider it a fortunate slow burn. And for that I picked Dawn by Eli Wiesel. This book actually has 3 of his stories in it. He's the guy who wrote Night, and that's in this trilogy. But Dawn is the second one in the trilogy, and I really enjoyed it. I liked Night too, but the reason that I would call Dawn, she lost her oh, she's teething, so she likes to chew on this. So the reason I would say Dawn is a slow burn, it's really short. All 3 of these stories are obviously short, but it's all kind of in the character's head. Dawn is about a man who is part of, as a freedom fighter after World War II. And in the book, his group has kidnapped one of the English soldiers in Palestine and is going to put him to death in the morning, and he has been chosen to be the one to kill the man. And it's him kind of spending all night about how he feels about having to murder this man in the morning. And this will be a public execution, and they're doing it in revenge for the fact that the English had killed one of their fighters. And it's him like remembering his time during the Holocaust. He survived living in a camp, and how he wants to have revenge because of all the things that has happened to him, but this man has never done anything to him personally, and just kind of his inner struggles with that. And so you spend all night in his head as he's thinking about the different morals involving the fact that he has to murder this man at dawn. And so it's a slow kind of plot because it's all in his head, but I really did enjoy listening to all of the kind of arguments and justifications that were happening as he was thinking about it. The next one is a book with an unfortunate death. And for the most part, I don't mind when an author kills off a character, because usually I think it's necessary to have some stakes in a book, especially series that have like long-running series. You want to have some stakes happening if there's like war or things happening. But I did pick The Mockingjay by Suzanne Collins. This is the 3rd in the Hunger Games. And there's a lot of death in this book, obviously, since it's all taking like a war. But the death specifically I'm talking about happens in the middle of the book. I'm not going to say who it is, but it was a character that I really loved. And obviously there's going to be casualties, and so I'm not like begrudging that the author killed this person off. But when I was reading, I was like crushed when this person died, because it was one of my favorite characters. The next is a book with an unfortunate setting that you wouldn't want to live in. And most people might pick a dystopian book for this, but I actually picked the book Everything, Everything by Nicola Yoon. And this is obviously a YA romance. But the reason is that the main character in this has a disease where she's allergic to everything. So she basically lives her entire life in her home, which has been like hermetically sealed, and pretty much only sees her mother and her tutor, or actually it's not her tutor, it's her, is it her maid or her nurse? It's her nurse. Okay, so it's her mother and her nurse are pretty much the only people that she sees, and she does all of her schooling online and all that stuff. And so I just think that would be miserable to just, I'm a social person, I like to get out of the house, I can't like stand being cooped up all the time. So this would just be miserable for me to live in my house all the time and only see like 2 people in my life. The next is a book that was unfortunately laborious to read. And you will see why when you see this book. This is Under the Dome by Stephen King. This is a huge book. And I read this on my Kindle, and it was one of those where you're watching the percentages go by, and it would be like on the same percentage forever. I'm like, I'm reading, and it's never changing to the next percentage. So it feels like you're never moving on. And this book was one that I didn't really enjoy that much, and so it was really hard to read. And most people think, why didn't you just stop reading? But I was reading it because I had started watching the TV show, and I thought it was going to be just a mini series and I would just be done and I would get to know the ending. And then they changed it from being a mini series to being a several season show, and I just like, I don't really want to watch another season. I want to know what the ending is. So I got the book on my Kindle and I read it, and it took me forever to get to the end. I just wanted to know what happened. I should have just looked up a spoiler review because it was torture reading that book. It was huge. The next, number 5, is the best book featuring a fortunate friendship. And I picked the Percy Jackson books, not this one specifically, but the whole series. I really love the friendship between Percy and Grover and Annabeth. I think that they're very loyal to each other. They have fun with each other. They take care of each other through these books. You know, they go through a lot of trials, and they're always wanting to save each other if one's in a dire situation, which they tend to be in dire situations. And they're just the best of friends, and I really like seeing their friendship develop and continue to grow strong throughout the series. Number 6 is a book that unfortunately no one talks about. And for this, I'm going to talk about an author in general, and that's Sarah Addison Allen. This book, especially The Garden Spells, is one of my favorite books ever. I've read it a few times. She's an adult author that writes kind of like romance, but then magical realism as well. And I just think her stories are very charming, and I never hear anybody talk about them, even in like regular life, not just booktube. I just never hear anybody mentioning her, but I love her books. Number 7 is a book that either fortunately or unfortunately transformed or haunts you. And for this, I picked Inferno by Dan Brown. This is a part of his series, what's the guy's name? Robert Langdon series, the one that has Angels and Demons and Da Vinci Code. This is the 4th book in the series, I believe. And it's kind of a weird one, you think, to pick as something that transformed you. But the reason is that the time that I was reading this, I was going through something that this directly affected. And this book is basically a mystery, but the villain in the book, he's this kind of mad scientist kind of person and creates a serum that will make a bunch of people infertile because he's obsessed with population overgrowth, and how if we keep everybody in the earth keeps reproducing at the rate they are, then we're going to overpopulate and destroy the earth. So he's trying to create this serum to like make it so that people will become infertile and will kind of like start over and not reproduce as much. And the thing was that I was reading this book at the time when we were deciding whether or not we were going to adopt again. So we'd already adopted once, and we were like, are we going to adopt again, or are we going to try other forms of fertility, like insemination or donors or whatever. And I had always been kind of like, I think I want to do adoption, but I was willing to listen to other options. And after reading this book, it seems kind of crazy, but hearing about all the population overgrowth and all that, I was like, we're gonna go with adoption. And I'm glad we did, because now we have Miss Eliza here that is like into everything. But that book helped me make that decision. So it was a book that transformed my life, obviously for the good. The next, number 8, is an unfortunately overhyped book. And probably people are not going to like my choice for this, but I recently read The Book Thief by Marcus Zusak, and I just really did not enjoy it that much. This book is really hyped still. It's a few years old, but people still love it. A lot of people still say it's their favorite book. I hardly ever hear, hold on sweetie, hardly hear anything bad about it, and I just thought it was average. I did not really like it, I didn't like the way it was written. I thought the story was fine, the characters, but I just really did not like the writing at all. And I'd read other books by him, so it wasn't necessarily him, but the way he wrote this one, I just really didn't like it. It was way overhyped for me. And the next one is a book taking place in an unfortunate future. And for this, I am going to pick a dystopian, and that is The Road by Cormac McCarthy. And if you haven't read this, this is a depressing book. It's about a future where people have mostly been killed off due to, like, I don't remember if it's due to, like, nuclear war, but the landscape, I mean, is basically just ash and wind, and this is just about a man and his son that are trying to find a way to survive in this desolate wasteland, and they can't interact with anybody else because other people could be, a lot of people are now become like murderers and cannibals because there's not really any food out there anymore, and so by just walking around on this road is very dangerous for them, and it is just super depressing and a very unfortunate future if that were to happen. And number 10 is a book that gets fortunately or unfortunately plot heavy towards the end. And for this one I picked Winter by Marissa Meyer, which is the last major novel in the Lunar Chronicles. And I like the Lunar Chronicles series in general, but this one was probably my least favorite book because I felt like it was like nothing was happening, nothing was really happening, and then suddenly like the last probably fourth of the book, everything happened, and I just wanted it to kind of be paced out a little more. I got a little bored a few times in the first half of the book because, you know, you're just bringing all these storylines together, so I know that she needed to set up that stuff, but I would have liked a little more plot-driven things to have happened earlier in the book instead of it kind of all culminating at the end. So that was a little unfortunate for me, but I still liked the series in total and how it ended and everything. I just thought the last book was paced a little weird. Number 11 is a book with a fortunate or unfortunate theme of mental health. And for this I picked Eliza and Her Monsters by Francesca Zappia. And I thought this was a good example of anxiety. I don't have anxiety, so I can't say 100% that it was the best representation, but I thought it was good. It was about a girl who, in high school, who's very who has anxiety, and so she doesn't necessarily socialize with other people in her school. She feels a little uncomfortable doing that, but online she has a real big presence. She writes a comic on the internet, and there she's famous, interacts with a lot of people, but just has trouble interacting in face-to-face with people at her school. So it kind of goes through her story. And then number 12 is a book with a fortunate or unfortunate family. And for this I picked Simon versus the Homo Sapiens Agenda by Becky Albertalli. And this is, I mean, at its heart, it's a romance that is about a boy who is coming out in high school and his first romance guy. And even though that's the basic plot, there's so much time that we get to spend with his family and with his friend group, and I just loved it. I loved to get to know how he and his family interacted and how they supported him and how his sisters especially, their relationships, and so I really enjoyed his family in this book. And then the last one is a book you unfortunately wish you could fortunately read for the first time. So something that I could go back and have my first reading of. And for this I picked Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows. And a lot of people would probably pick, you know, the beginning of the series to relive the whole magic again. But for me, I want to relive finding out the ending again. I didn't read Harry Potter until the first, I think 5 books were out. So I binge read the first 5 books. The 6th one was about to come out. I read that one right away. And then I had like that year of anticipating this book to come out. And so I would like to relive that anticipation of not knowing how it was going to end. Because at this point we all know like the whole series and what the whole story, and even more since J.K. Rowling still gives little tidbits. But I want to go back to that time of not knowing and getting to read the whole last book again and experiencing that for the first time. And so those are all the prompts, and I would like to tag Grace from Happy Reading. I'm picking her because she really likes to read young readers and middle grade books, so I thought she probably has read the Unfortunate Events series, and hopefully she likes them more than I. She's younger, so she probably actually read them in her childhood. So sorry if Eliza was being very squirmy in this video and making it hard for me to concentrate, so hopefully I didn't babble too much because I got her and then Bernadette's over there trying to talk to me during this too. So hope you enjoyed this, and I'll see you next time. Bye.